All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Arcade. My name is Brian. I'm here with John, the problematic white guy, and this is the Week in Culture. I hope you guys are doing well this Saturday morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you may be. I assume for most people that are watching, it's either the early evening or the morning. For me, it's morning. So, John, how are you doing, man?
Oh, awesome as always. I got a good night's rest. I been playing a lot of Death Stranding, the first one, all over again. I got it for Steam, and so I'm doing a very hard run.
Oh
And
yeah.
I figured out a few interesting things. My plan is I'm going to get all the way to the end game and have everything there, and then I'm going to kind of do like a little breakdown on some stuff, and then kind of like what the story is actually about and kind of the things behind it all. And then I'm going to do another playthrough from the very beginning on very hard and show people tactics that they can use, so I can kind of break it out of people's minds. So it's just this walking simulator. But I'm waiting for my PC from the UK to arrive because Tomby was cool enough to tell me that he's actually
Oh,
getting it sent off now. So yeah, I'll have a system with an AMD 7 Ryzen processor and 32 gigs of RAM here in a couple of weeks or a month or so, whatever. So that'll be great. So yeah,
all
I
right.
can't complain. Yeah.
All right, man. Sounds good. So, yeah, we got a packed show today. For my part, by the way, I recently made a big change to some of my software that I use for, sort of like audio mixing when I host streams. I used to
Hmm.
have this one program called Voice Meter Potato. There's
I'm aware.
also, you know about that one?
Yeah, yep, yep.
Yeah. My only issue with voice meter though is that you have to have a PhD in
Excuse me.
audio engineering to like understand it, and
Kind
I end
of.
up having to look up guides every time to make sure I'm putting the right outputs and the right inputs, and it's just
Yeah.
insane. But there is a new program now that does this really, really intuitively for streamers specifically. It's called Steel Series GG.
Hmm.
And if you guys are interested in streaming or at least doing some audio mixing, you want to be able to control, your audio in a way that is a little bit more intuitive, then I would recommend Steel Series GG. But anyway, I'm using that now. I got rid of the other thing. I think it was kind of killing my CPU too.
It
So,
does have a lot of overhead on it. I use in Windows. I was using Mixline from Logitech, which worked
uh-huh.
really well. It's got like a virtual plug board, so you can kind of see how everything's routing. And then on my Steam Deck, it's got an audio controller built right into it called Audio
Yeah.
Pulse, and so I just use that for the current situation. But of course, I'll switch that up here in the next little bit of time as soon as that new system arrives.
Hmm. All
Yeah.
right. All right. Well, with all that said, though, if you guys could, if you don't mind, hit that like button or that up. What is it called on Rumble? It's like I think that it's just like it's just like it's a thumbs up. So hit that
Hmm.
thumbs up on Rumble and YouTube. It'll help me reach more people while we're live. I'd appreciate that very much. So with all that said, let's get into the story. So first, we got this whole business with Visa Mastercard. So
Yeah,
what is this
this is a
about? So
mess.
you guys remember last week we talked about Collective Shout, which is a feminist activist organization out of Australia that wants to minimize, violence and objectification of the sexualization of women in gaming, but it's also just in media in general. And they have cracked down on, they have tried to crack down on Steam many times. They've been like banging the drum on their particular uh, puritanical views going all the way back to the days of Grand Theft Auto 5's release and like Detroit Become Human. Anyway, this has basically picked up more steam. There's been more events, and this is actually ongoing. It's not over yet. So I want to get you guys caught up to speed on everything that's happened. So in mid 2025, a significant controversy emerged involving Steam. Itch.io, which is another platform for gaming. There's a lot of like indies that put out games there. So it's sort of like open for whoever wants to make a game and they're looking to reach people. I know that when I helped host the base game jam stuff, and I'm still willing to do that, by the way, if anybody from BitSpace is watching. I just don't, for whatever reason, Duke doesn't reach out to me anymore. But it's okay. I don't know. Maybe they're just busy, but a lot of their Game Jam games will be downloaded from itch.io. So that was actually my first experience with itch.io. But anyway, and involving major payment processors like Visa and Mastercard, centered around the removal of adult-themed games from these platforms. The issue stems from pressure applied by payment processors influenced by advocacy groups like Collective Shout, leading to changes in content policies and sparking widespread backlash from gamers, developers, and free speech advocates. So, pre-July 2025, Australian advocacy group Collective Shout campaigns against games on Steam and itch.io that they claim depict non-consensual violence, rape, and incest. Yes, this is a video game, I know, but it's still non-consensual to them, arguing these normalize violence against women. They initially approached Steam and itch.io to directly, but claim they were ignored, prompting them to target payment processors like Visa, Mastercard, and PayPal. On July 16th of this year, Steam updates its publisher guidelines with a new Rule 15 prohibiting content that violates the rules and standards of its payment processors, banks, or card networks, particularly focusing on certain kinds of adult-only content, which is a very, very vague way of describing this. And this is the problem. This vague rule leads to the immediate removal of nearly 100 adult-themed games from Steam, including those with themes like non-consensual fantasies, hypnosis, or slavery, despite being legal and labeled for mature audiences. And also, some of them weren't sexual at all. There was a couple of like indie horror games that were ended up getting blasted by this. On July 16th through 17th, itch.io, a much smaller indie game platform, also de-indexes hundreds of adult games from its search results, citing pressure from payment processors like PayPal and Stripe, which support Visa and Mastercard's transactions. Itch.io notes its limited ability to push back compared to Valve, Steam's present company, and begins exploring alternative payment processors, much to the benefit of itch.io. At least they're looking for alternatives, right?
Right.
July 17th, 2025, a change.org petition titled Tell MasterCard, Visa, and activist groups stop controlling what we can watch, read, or play is launched, criticizing the payment processors' influence and accusing them of inconsistent standards. For example, allowing platforms like OnlyFans to operate with less scrutiny, because they do, right? You can use your Visa, Mastercard, or PayPal to pay for OnlyFans, or Patreon, and there's a lot of adult content there as well.
Right.
This petition quickly gains traction, reaching over 77,000 signatures within days. On July 21st to 23rd, gamers organized campaigns like Operation Fighting Fire with Fire, flooding Visa and MasterCard with emails and phone calls to protest the censorship. Social media platforms like Reddit and Blue Sky amplify these efforts, with a now deleted Reddit post on our Steam gaining over 17,000 upvotes. The petition surpasses 147,000 signatures by July 28th. July 25th through 29th, the controversy escalates as reports emerge of Collective Shout allegedly faking threats to themselves, obviously. This is like Feminist Playbook 101, to bolster their campaign, drawing criticism for their tactics. Visa responds generically, stating it processes legal transactions and does not make moral judgments, but gamers and developers call this a lie, citing the removal of legal content. Mastercard clarifies it did not directly contact Valve, but communicated through payment processors, citing its Rule 5.12.7 and brand risk concerns. Did you want to say something about that?
The funny thing, I did engage in giving a call to MasterCard this week, and they did try to read me that corpo statement, and I just told the person on the phone, I was like, look, you really don't have to do that. Like, I understand it's your job, but I want to talk to you about reality, not some corpo speak. And and I would encourage anybody, if you do call these people to voice your concerns, just be polite and considerate. Remember, the person on the other end of the phone is just doing a job. They are still a human. And even though they may be in a compromised position working for such corrupt entities, you probably will be able to get further along and waste more of the company's time and effort and money if you are cordial and polite and considerate to the person who's there. And you might even actually be able to get them a little bit more, knowledgeable on the situation as well, because some people, like the woman I talked to, she didn't know what any of this was. So yeah.
Yeah,
But
well, the call, and I will also add that, if you call them, they will say you should just email us. But here's the thing: if you email them, they'll just block it. They won't look at it.
right.
If you call them, the call center has to answer, and
Hmm.
because the call center for Visa and Mastercard are like separate entities that are paid by Visa, Mastercard to exist, they'll have to pay for those calls.
Right.
So you are basically putting the pressure on not just by being vocal, but you're also costing them a little bit of money every time you call into the call center. So if you
Indeed.
do it, don't be respectful, because the people in the call center, they're not involved with all of this. Ultimately, it comes down to collective shout. But it's what I think you need to do is the credit card companies, they respond to losses financially or
Exactly.
costs that are becoming disproportionate. They're probably right in saying that they're not morally invested, but they're under the illusion that what collective shout is saying, or what they stand for, is actually like a much larger voice than it actually is. Most of the time,
Right.
these advocacy groups are just like these consulting firms. They give the illusion that they are the viewpoint, they are the mainstream audience, right? They
Right.
are the people that if you bend the knee to, you will benefit or you will profit. But it's not true. They're a loud minority. And
Right.
so if you see that there's way more people that are pushing back against it than there are people who are in support of it, then Visa, Mastercard will respond because they want to get paid. So
Right.
that is, like, you can call it whatever you want, but at the end of the day, I much rather be dealing with people who respond to money than rather they're like moral high ground
Ideology. Right.
bullshit, which is obviously not even consistent, because Collective Shout supported Cuties, which was a Netflix show that was pretty bad. Like, I don't want to get into
Mhm.
it now, but it
Right.
was a very, very like weird and bad thing. And again, they don't have a problem with OnlyFans existing. They don't have a problem with Patreon supporting adult content. They probably have a sketchy ass hard drive. But it's all about control. So
Indeed. Also, one other thing to note: if you do decide to call, as soon as you get into the main menus, just start hitting the 0 key on your phone and just do it, do it, do it, do it until it prompts you to put in your card number, and then zero that out too, and then ask to speak to an agent. The AI control system at that point in time will turn you over to a human because they're trying to resolve your account, and it will escalate you getting through to someone a little bit faster. And then when you get in contact with the person, just let them know that you're calling as a concerned citizen. You want to talk to them about, a current issue, because they'll ask you what purchases is about or anything like that. And then, at some point in time, they will ask you for your contact information, to which I just said, you're already doing enough prying into my privacy that I really don't feel comfortable giving you that information, but I do want you to pass this information along. And I even told the person I was talking to that I was specifically calling because it was going to cost them money. So, I mean, you can be open and honest and clear. Just be considerate and polite, because, yeah, the people that are there are just third parties to the whole affair, because generally speaking, they are call centers that are being paid, a fee
yeah,
to do this work for the cardholders themselves.
and the calls cost them some money. So, like, that's what
Indeed.
I'm saying. Yeah, like
Yep.
when you talk to a human being, it costs them money, and they should be like it's a way to get their attention, essentially.
Right.
So, all right. Anyway, then in the last couple of days, the backlash grows. This is as of yesterday, with figures like Elon Musk supporting the petition and criticizing payment processors. Itch.io clarifies that some games were not removed but failed to meet indexing requirements, and they are working on clearer guidelines. That would be a good idea. Valve
Hmm.
confirms it attempted to negotiate with MasterCard but was forced to comply to maintain payment processing capabilities. The petition continues to gain signatures, and discussions about alternative payment systems like cryptocurrency intensify, which, of course, that's a whole other can of worms. The cryptocurrency thing, because if you guys don't know, the central banks are working on their own, what they're
Hmm.
calling the
Digital. Well,
CBC. Yeah.
it used to be. They just recently changed it. they're now going to call it the digital dollar because they know that the central bank digital currency CBDC is cooked in terms of when you
Well,
mention
its
it, people
optics are cooked,
right,
yes, but
yeah,
that's not going to save them because the word is still getting out. And
right,
so like the crypto thing, this is why I think the crypto, central bank digital currency, Robert Johnson. Um, this is why I think because there's a lot of like, let's say, um, weird information that flies around regarding like Bitcoin and stuff.
hmm
And I'm like, I'm not really sure if I should be pro that or not. There's a lot of scams. If you guys remember the Hawk girl had like a coin and it turned out to be a scam or something. And I don't think she knew. I think that she was like a useful idiot at the
She
end of the
doesn't seem like
day.
someone who knows much of anything, to
No,
be
no, she
quite
got
honest.
dragged into it. Like, well, we're going to use you to make, a crypto
Right.
out of it. And so, like, I don't know what, but I do know that the CBDC should be like very, very like avoided if at all possible, because at the end of the day, like the banks, and we're talking about like the Fed and stuff, which, well, anyway, I don't want to. Again, that's like a whole other thing. Like, just end the Fed, let's stop. Bankers are bad. They start all the wars. That's all I'm saying. But
Indeed.
and then there is a GOG is doing like some free games, an NSFW free game giveaway. So if you
Yeah.
like GOG, that's pretty cool too. I forgot to mention. But okay, so where are we at right now as of today? Steam and itch.io, both platforms have removed or de-indexed hundreds of adult games to comply with payment processor demands, though itch.io is actively seeking alternative payment options. Steam has not reversed its policy, and Valve's statements suggest that they are constrained by the threat of losing payment processing narratives, which would cripple their ability to sell any games.
Right. Because you can't have a
Um,
digital storefront with hard cash dollars. It's
yeah,
kind
I
of
believe
impossible.
this image here is from the game that was used as the pretense for all of this uh, censorship, which is ultimately what it is.
hmm
Um, I think this is the one, I can't remember the name of it. It's some rape simulator thing that is actually been around for a while, and there have been people complaining about it for some time. Um, I think it's called No Escape or something like that, but I'm
I
not
believe
sure.
so. Or No
Yeah,
Mercy.
no
One of the
escape or no mercy, something like that. But
yeah.
anyway, Visa and Mastercard face ongoing public pressure. So this is on the other side, with customer service teams reportedly overwhelmed by complaints. Mastercard's indirect influence through its rules has been confirmed, but both companies maintain that they are not directly censoring content, relying on vague risk or brand protection policies. So they're basically like, using like corporate speak to avoid, let's say, the
Accountability.
consequences, and ultimately, avoid accountability.
Yeah.
Um, Community response. The change.org petition has exceeded 147,000 signatures, and grassroots campaigns continue to target Visa and MasterCard. Gamers and developers argue that payment processors should not act as moral gatekeepers, especially for legal content, and fear this sets a precedent for a broader censorship, potentially affecting other genres like LGBTQ plus content, which probably most of the degenerate stuff is probably like, lefty, gay, like furry
Furry.
LGBTQ stuff. And
Yeah.
so you could say that, there is a bridge being gapped here, but I think, well, I'll get to it later. I don't think that the enemy of my enemy is my enemy still. That's all I'm saying about that. But
Right.
I'll come back to it, because that comes back to what one of the main topics is which is Anita Sarkeesian, which I'm going to get to because she is also involved in this and she seems to be taking our side, but I I, I don't think it's as simple as that. It's not that.
I don't think it's. I think to say that taking our side is kind of like that's minimizing it. It
Yeah,
just
but people
happens
are
to be that
framing it this
there's
way. They're like, "Oh
right.
my God, she's on our
Oh, I
side." It's
know,
like, no, 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 no.
but this just happens to be a common space where people that are adults have a tendency to be interested in adult
Yeah,
content, and regardless how depraved it might be, or debaucherous, or whatever your proclivities are, and what way that it leans, we do all have at least the whole commonality of I'm a grown ass man, I'm 44, don't treat me like I'm 14, kind of
Yeah.
situation. But yeah, it is making for a very interesting, I guess, situation that is ever evolving as the days go by.
Yeah. All right. So, some advocate for decentralized payment solutions like cryptocurrency to bypass processor control. I
Mhm.
don't have any crypto coins or anything like that because, again, I'm not really well educated on it, admittedly. So I don't know because I don't have a lot of money. So I can't like roll the dice and invest in something that turns out to be a scam. That would
Right.
just be, I just can't deal with that. So I'm not doing that. I don't know that cash seems to be like dying. Like I mean, like actual paper money. I have
Hmm.
some, and I think it's a good idea to have some on your hand at all times. But I don't know, man. Well, anyway, again, I don't want to get into a banking conversation, but Collective Shout faces accusations of fabricating threats and overreaching. Like, what are you talking about, overreaching? With critics arguing their campaign unfairly targets fictional content while ignoring real world issues. They defend their actions, claiming they are protecting women and girls, but their methods have polarized the gaming community.
Hmm.
Broader implications. The controversy has sparked debates about financial censorship, with calls for payment processors to be treated as utilities required to process all legal transactions. Yeah, it's your money.
Right.
Especially if it's like a debit card or something, right? But
Hmm.
remember, debit cards will have a Visa or Mastercard, usually Mastercard logo on them,
Right.
and that doesn't mean that it's their money; it's your money. So
Right.
this is like the most important principle we're looking at here.
Yep. Which is
Okay,
also another one of those interesting things when you get into the history of the technology behind VeriSign.
yeah,
The cataloging numbers that were used for people in the Holocaust, that's actually based on them and IBM's technology, have evolved from those instances. So when they sit here and try to like pull some kind of moral high ground, it's like you've been in weird fuck shit since forever.
yeah,
Um, so it is kind of interesting to watch them do like their whole copes, like where they're like, well, we didn't directly tell anyone. No one said you directly did this. We're saying that you caused an indirect action and sent agents, and other agencies to do your bidding for you, which is, it would have been more respectful if you would have actually done it yourself. But the fact that you're now involving third parties so that you can sit here and say, wasn't me, bro. I mean, it's the same thing that the gaming industry's done with all these, uh, you know, uh, the groups that we're going to bring in a consulting firm and make sure that everything is above board and you care about like like these issues. It's cattle gating, and then they can sit there and say, oh, wasn't me, bro. Like those people over at SBI, like and it's just like, no, it was still the heads of your business, and they you sought out the consulting firms. It's the same thing with these card agencies right now. Mastercard and Visa went to their payment processor Stripe and PayPal and said, hey, do this for us because you're beholden to our terms of service. And they just, it's a pyramid scheme of power and control, and that's in and of itself terrible enough. But when you go and involve all these other intermediaries so that you can sit here and just kind of say, well, my hands are clean, it wasn't me, that's even
yeah,
worse.
for sure, for sure. Well, I mean, again, I think the like Valve and GOG and stuff. I think they're trying to like
Oh yeah.
stay out of trouble. But the
Right.
problem is that they don't know that the people who are it's essentially like these groups like Collective Shout and like Sweet Baby Inc. from the consulting side,
Hmm.
they create the illusion of having more power and influence over a company's ability to make a profit
Right.
than they actually do. And the companies respond to it because they don't know that these people don't speak for, you know, the
Vast
average
majority of
gamer.
real
They don't
real
speak for the
people.
audience, right? And like if you want to like I think that well, you know what? I want to get to it, but I want to finish this thing that
Yeah.
I wrote up here. Because I do want to say something about censorship and the problem with it, and this is like from the more, let's say, the right wing people that have an issue. They're basically in support of this, and I think that there's something they're missing that's very
Right.
crucial. But look, okay. So there's also concerns about international laws influencing US platforms. Yes.
Hmm.
Right. And the potential for further content restrictions, investigations such as the Japanese FTC's probe into Visa and MasterCard for antitrust violations add to the scrutiny. So like, yeah, Japan is getting involved with this. And then remember in the UK, I believe it was the UK, they passed
The
a
Online Safety
new
Act.
the Safety Act, the Internet Safety Act, or whatever, and
Hmm.
supposedly all of this is under the pretense of protecting the children.
Right.
And YouTube has like a new thing to verify your age that's going to use artificial intelligence to
Hmm.
verify the ages of users so that they're supposedly to protect them from going to watch videos they're not supposed to. But again, YouTube already has something for this. It's called YouTube Kids. So
Right.
if you have minors watching YouTube, you could they could just use YouTube Kids. And
Right.
all of this, well, I can even get into where this all comes from, but first, as
Yeah.
of today, the situation remains unresolved. Steam and itch.io continue to face challenges balancing payment processor demands with community expectations, their customers. The growing petition and public campaigns indicate significant resistance, but there is no guarantee of policy reversal. The controversy highlights tensions between corporate control, free expression, and consumer choice, with alternative payment systems being explored as a potential solution.
Right.
And to that, I would say if you want to be, if you have like, you want to become like a fucking multi-billionaire overnight, start a new credit card and say that you'll be the one that'll allow all of these processes to go through. Just
Right.
somebody come up with a new credit card. Like Discover, American Express, you guys could turn your lives around. Diners Club International.
Hmm.
You can just like that would be that would be the most hilarious thing. I mean, I think even somebody was joking about Valve creating their own credit card.
Yeah.
Like,
A
I mean,
Steam
why
card.
not?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
like we know that. Like, I don't think Gabe wants to do this, but I think that he like Valve is experiencing a lot of pressure. Well, Gabe is basically retired, but like,
Right, but
you
they're
know,
very much in a compromised position. But yeah, a lot of the stuff ultimately, is put into the terms of service, and it is intentionally vaguely worded so that they can have their arbitrary enforcement, however they want you to be beholden. Another person that's group that's entered into the fray of all this, age verification insanity is evidently Take Two, Rockstar. They're going to be implementing an age gate on Grand Theft Auto Online, and if they do it, largest, one of the longest running, largest online supported titles currently, then it's going to downstream a lot of other games and game companies to do the same thing. So, I mean, this whole thing is it's really interesting just in the sense of what all is being revealed and all these
yeah,
things happening in parallel. And I mentioned earlier this week that on the thumbnail I have the WEF sitting in the car, right? Because they're the ones who are getting to their destination. They want all these other people to do their work for them. And I truly believe that all this stuff would be happening, but under a different guise, had the bioweapon attack from 5 years ago actually been more effective. Then these things would all still be happening right now. But because that bioweapon attack did not work to the way that they wanted it to actually be carried out, they're trying to find other ways to still hit their 2030 plan. And ultimately, like doing stuff through all this terms of service, kind of covert means is how it's all being done, because they can't rely on saying, well, it's for your health, it's for your safety. So instead they're saying, well, it's for the kids. We're the greater good here, ultimately. And it's all just, by any means necessary. That's how they want to get to their destination. And that destination is ultimately you sitting in a pod, eating the bugs, owning nothing, and being happy.
yeah. So a word about like what I have been seeing from certain, let's say, people that are more on the conservative side reacting to this. They are happy because there's like this ongoing, debate or discussion or argument about whether or not like adult content like pornography is considered free speech. And I think that what they are missing is, and I say this with some sympathy, okay?
Hmm.
If you agree with that, if you agree with the censorship of not safe for work or NSFW adult content, even though it's already been screens in such a way that children can't access it, you
Hmm.
know, so it's already got like the warnings on it. If you support the banning of that stuff, then you are setting a very dangerous precedent, full stop. Even if
Right.
you're against pornographic games. I don't play any pornographic games. Okay.
Right.
I'm I'm a Christian. It's not I don't think it's good for your soul to indulge in that.
Right.
But I'm not going to censor it. I'm not going to call for its removal because people have to choose. They have
Right.
to choose that. Okay. You can't
Right.
force them. If you force them, then you're just going to drive them further down that like path because they're going to do it in a sense out of spite for your essentially like removing it from them. If you don't want kids to be in danger, guess what? Parent them. Like
Right.
this is the thing that like we've created, or like our, let's say our elites, our
Hmm.
governments have created the conditions for children to basically be able to like run around un let's say without
Unrestrained.
any parents, no guardians, nothing
Hmm.
in their life to essentially monitor what they're doing and ensure that they are doing stuff that's good for them, right? Your parents should be doing that. So like,
Right.
what have we done with parenting? Well, we've taken the father out of the home way back in the 60s when Lyndon Johnson started the Great Society,
Hmm.
right? And essentially paid women to exclude the fathers of their children. And now we're 3 generations after that, and the kids are not all right.
Right.
And only the ones that had their parents at home. And now that there are, just kids doing whatever, and maybe some of them are getting into trouble or whatever it might be, they're using that situation that was made decades ago as a pretense to essentially control our media and take these things away from us. And they'll use the things that you might agree with it. Like I said, like I don't think it's good for you to indulge in that too much. But I'm not going to tell you can't do it. I'm
Right.
not going to try to take it away from you. I'm not going to call for it to be censored. I'm not going to like limit your use of your credit card because it's not my business, and I know that that's a dangerous precedent to set.
Yeah.
Because look,
Nor.
they can get rid of all the pornographic games tomorrow. They're going to go after the violent ones next. They're going to
Right.
go after ones that are just like, oh, borderline, whatever that even means. I mean, they
Yeah.
went after Detroit Human. I already told you, Detroit Become Human and GTA 5.
Hmm.
And do you think that they wouldn't go after GTA 6, even if GTA 6 is completely like nerfed beyond, like of all of its edge? Like they
Right.
completely like make it absolutely safe and as essentially accessible to everyone as possible, which is probably what they're going to do because they want to sell more copies. They're
Right.
going to go after that one anyway,
Right.
just because it had GTA in the name and it involves guns, like whatever it is. So this
Right.
is a really, really bad precedent to set. If you don't want this stuff to exist, then don't use it. And also, maybe raise your kids so they don't use it. But don't call for or support this censorship.
Right. Well,
Even if you don't believe it is censorship, just don't support this limiting of people's ability to do what they want with their money.
right. And you bring up a good point when you talk about this in terms of you yourself having a religious background, but you're somebody who operates under the principles and the values of good faith. And if you find yourself putting yourself in a position that your faith would tell you is not yours, being overtly judgmental, that is not acting in accordance to good faith. Just at a front, that is not your place in this world. We are supposed to have free agency, and the place of judgment and ultimate forgiveness is that of God, if that is the thing that you believe in. And and so like that's the thing that I find that is really interesting in all this is uh, you know and in the Bible itself, Lucifer was cast out of heaven for saying that he would make everyone be good. And so, like, that's the thing is when you, from a overtly religious kind of, crusading zealotry, decide that you're going to abide by the state of man, then you are you are putting yourself in a worse situation for entering into the gate of heaven. And that's the whole thing, is like you are supposed to be not of this world. And so like when you confine yourself to these matters and get into, well, this needs to be control gate and this and that, ultimately, even though you think that you are somebody who is operating in good faith, you're clinging so tightly to your religion that your faith is getting squeezed out of you. And so it might not be easy, but that's kind of the whole point, is free agency is on the individual. And it is not your place to sit here and try to extol your virtues and your pride upon someone else, because those things themselves are sinful. And so if you do operate in a capacity of good faith, generally speaking, people in good faith will respect you regardless the silly hat of religion that you wear, because good faith is the thing that all religions are based upon, whatever it may be called, whatever kind of thing that it's attached to. Ultimately, the good faith is the thing that matters, not the dogmatic principles that set it up into something that can be traditionalized and kind of regimented through whatever religious means. And I even say that for the people who 5 years ago were saying trust the science. Because science in and of itself is asking questions. And when you get to the point where you're saying trust the science, then you don't actually have faith in science. You just have a belief in the control state. And so to anybody who is considers themselves to be somebody who is faith-based and a good person within their religion, don't be a busybody. Don't worry about what other people are doing. Focus on your own path and try to take the best steps ahead that you possibly can.
Yeah, I think some of these guys that are, bringing up their, like, they see this as an opportunity to push their religion on people.
Right.
And I think that it's the easiest way to drive people away from it. Honestly.
Exactly.
And I think it's counterproductive. And ultimately, we are given free will so that we can choose the good, but we have to choose it. If you force it on someone, it's not good.
Right. It's just
That's
like
literally
DEI.
what the
Didn't earn it,
communists say.
right?
They say, well, we have to take care of people, so we need the state to do that, right? But that's not charity, because it's the state, it's violence, it's theft. It's theft and redistribution. That's not charity. Charity is giving of your own free will, right? This is why people who are not talking about the guys that I'm talking about with regards to the censorship thing, but in general, if you look at the data, people who are conservative, they actually tend to give more money to charity than people who are Democrats or liberals, because liberals think the state will cover it, so I'm not going to do it myself, right? So,
and they're less likely to make it some big gala kind of event.
No, because you're not supposed to. That's vainglorious. When if you say, well, I gave, so you don't talk about it. I mean, we're not perfect. Everybody makes mistakes, but I think that the mistake is that you should do so without talking about it, because that in and of itself is sinful, because it's vainglorious. You're basically saying, look at me, I'm giving charity. So that's not how you do it. You have to basically just do it because you know that this isn't about you and it's just the right thing to do, and that's it. You don't even tell people you do it. I mean, I don't talk about it.
Yeah, if your focus is on the spectacle rather than the substance, then
it's like you want to be seen doing it.
Your acts of good work are just the appearance of doing good, and not actually just doing good so that you can know within your heart, that.
And I think the people who are vocally doing this, I think they're trying to score some points, get a little bit of engagement, rage bait people, and the best thing to do is just ignore them, because they're not in the right. They have work to do on themselves, and they're setting a very, like I said, it's a very dangerous precedent. You're basically giving the worst people the means to control you, because they're basically trying to remove something that maybe you think people shouldn't be indulging in, but ultimately those people should choose that. You can't make them. That's all it's come down to, is force. I always believe that freedom or liberty, whichever word you prefer, must exist downstream from reality, but it also must be chosen. Like, it must be the freedom to choose the good, right? And that's why I say it must be downstream from reality. Like, you can't be free in every way, because we are not, we are limited beings, you know, like for example, some trans people will say that I want to be free to live as the other gender. Well, you can't, because that's
Yeah.
not reality. You can't
Right,
be
right. But
and you're
that
not.
takes in a whole bunch of
You
super
can't use freedom
science
to
and
justify something that is against reality, right?
right.
But you
Yeah.
can choose freedom or use freedom to do something that is good, that is in line with reality. Like I want to develop a new, I don't know, medicine or something, right? I want to build this piece of technology. That's a good thing that will service mankind, and you should be free to do that. So like this, you know, this alliance that we find ourselves in it's
Mhm.
very shaky, because there are people who are trying to use this to push their own agendas, or they're going to like turn on you as soon as they can, with the in the case of Anita Sarkeesian, which we're going to get into
Right.
in a second. um so yeah. Gabriel in the chat says, I recall when Jack Thompson was considered the main threat to video game censorship, simpler times. The thing is, his criticisms were very mild. I know a lot of people think of him, and he was put in a Mortal Kombat game, and you could kill him in the game, and like all this stuff. But ultimately, his concerns made sense, and he wasn't calling for censorship. I think there was like an interview with him for a documentary that Airplay, this guy who did a big Gamergate documentary with the old Gamergate, and he spoke to Jack Thompson, I believe, or he got a footage of someone else interviewing him, and Jack Thompson was like, I didn't want to censor anything, but he was for the sort of like, a rating system that was a bit more
Right.
robust, I guess, so that
Right.
people that were
Well,
not of the appropriate age for a game weren't able to access it. And I
right.
think
And
that
to,
it's, but we did react strongly to it. But it's weird because today we have to fight even harder for stuff that's actually more like, I don't know, like that would just should be
right.
easier. You know what I mean?
Right. And to give a little bit of context to that, his whole thing was about you should have some kind of advisory board within your own ranks, within your own system, so that it doesn't get handed over to the state as
Feel like some central authority. Yeah.
right, right, right. And so, the ESRB and movie ratings, any kind of rating, they're not laws, they are guidelines. And so ultimately, this again defaults back to good parenting. And once you're of age to make your own decisions, you know, um, I don't care if you want to wear a dress, if you want to, like even go so far as to like have some kind of weird, crazy surgery if you're of age. While I do think that you are delusional and, you know, committing acts of just genital mutilation and things like that,
Yeah.
I'm free to have that opinion. But again, I'm not going to stop you. But to sit here and when they make the argument that I'm free to do this because it's like, well, you're free to change the book's cover, but it's not going to ever change the story on the inside. And I don't want to get too far from the point, but like that's the whole thing is like, um, having good advice and giving people your perspective. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But when you go and try to enforce your ideals and your morality upon other people, then you're generally getting further and further away from even what the whole point of what you're striving to do might be. So it's a very interesting thing. Like life is not an easy road, and you have to find ways to balance between the extremes because those extremes, whether they be on the left or the right of the paradigm, will ultimately, as we are seeing now, will lead up an authoritarian kind of doctrines taking hold, and that doesn't do any good for anyone. And most of us are just trying to just be people and live our lives as we are, and whether we are the most chaste and virtuous, or just somebody who actually realizes that no, I'm kind of like I'm a person, so I do have the tendency to commit errors and sin and things like that. That's why you have to be forgiving. If you wish to be forgiven of the things that are your proclivities, then you have to be forgiving of others, whether they mesh with yours or not. But ultimately, with that said, though, as I always do, is leave the kids alone. They're supposed to be shepherded and stewarded by their parents, not the state.
Yeah, and again, it's a bad move to think that the government should be involved, and that's statism, which is leftism. That's why
Right.
I say that people who are okay with that They can tell me they're right wing, but that's
Right.
leftism. If you want the state doing this, that is leftism, and it's okay. I'm not saying that there's a moral component to that. I'm not saying it's inferior. In my opinion, it is, but like, that is what it is, and I think that's why you should be very careful. I mean, it's leftism ultimately is authoritarianism, and that's what, because there's no other way to. It can't exist in any other way. It's
Right.
always authoritarian because the state is force, and that's all it is. And so, like, if you say, well, I think that this should be removed for the kids' sake, guess what? You're a leftist. You can tell me you're not, but that's
Right.
what you're, that's what it is. That's how you're acting. That's what's demonstrated. So anyway, the other thing I was going to say about this too, and I hope that this does come up, because I think this is like probably the most important factoid about this. Collective Shout, the people who are pushing this, that's an Australian backed group, right? They're like,
Mhm.
they're funded by Australian NGOs and nonprofits, but they're not American. So why is
Right.
it they're having any influence on any other country except their own? I know that
Right.
Australia has crazy censorship, and that's their problem. They're going to have to figure that out. But you can't really go around imposing that on us. And yet I think that's probably one of the more important uh, points to make about this, is that, hey,
Mhm.
these are Australians, that they don't have our values. Like,
Right.
remember, and this is also very important, the United States is the only country in the world that actually has a First Amendment. No other countries can boast having free speech, but they don't, because it's not enshrined in their like founding documents. It's not enshrined into their law. So
Yep.
they'll say it, but it only exists until it doesn't. And that's what happened in Canada, the UK, Europe, Scotland, Ireland, Australia, New Zealand, all over. We're the only ones, and that's why it's always under attack. Because if we lose it, then it's over for all of us. Like, no one
Right.
has it. We're like
Right.
basically the only bulwark against censorship, or at least that is for freedom of speech, like
Right.
truly for it.
If we
So
didn't have our freedom of speech and our means to protect it, i.e., the Second Amendment, then yeah, the world would already be lost to statism.
yeah. So anyway, I think I might remember something else I wanted to say about this, but I think that's where I'm at right now with
Yeah.
it. I am I'm a free speech absolutist, always have been. And even if I disagree with your speech, even if I find it repulsive, even if I find it blasphemous, you're still allowed to do it. I mean, they built there was like a satanic Baphomet in a
Hmm.
government building thing, and some guy destroyed it, and I was like, well, I get why he did it. But if it was up, I wouldn't have cared, because I
Right.
think ultimately we can choose. Like, that's not my
Right.
thing, right? And I would
Right.
I would basically have petitioned to get it taken down, because it was in a government building, which is a building paid for by taxpayers. So, but anyway, so let's talk a little bit. What were Valve's statements about this? So apparently, this is Valve stated in multiple outlets, including Gaming on Linux, PC Gamer, and Eurogamer. Were recently notified that certain games on Steam may violate the rules and standards set forth by our payment processors and their related card networks and banks. As a result, we are retiring those games from being sold on the Steam store, because loss of payment methods would prevent customers from being able to purchase other titles and game content on Steam. We are directly notifying developers of these games and issuing app credits should they have another game they'd like to distribute on Steam in the future. And then there was another clarification statement made to Kotaku, emphasizing that Mastercard in particular exerted influence indirectly through payment processors. Mastercard did not communicate with Valve directly,
Right.
despite our request to do so. Mastercard communicated with payment processors and their acquiring banks. Payment processors communicated this with Valve, and we replied by outlining Steam's policy, since payment processors rejected Steam's policies and specifically cited Mastercard's rule, which I read earlier, 5.12.7, and risk to the Mastercard brand.
Brand. Right.
Um, yeah, so I think that is another thing that we could think about, that I'd like to see, is that maybe people shouldn't use like these big banks I've been like I'm with Fifth Third. That's my bank right now. It used to
Mhm.
be, I think it used to be called MB Financial, but that place, I guess they like closed down and they got eaten up by Fifth Third. But I've been thinking about switching to just like a credit union. I don't know, like credit
Yeah.
unions might be the move. I don't know if you guys know anything about that. Let me know what you guys think. And if you're not an American, I don't know if you guys have. I assume that credit unions are everywhere, but if they
I'd
do
imagine.
exist, what do you think about that? Like, because we need to decentralize this so that the banks don't get to make these calls, because that's ultimately what this is. The
Right.
banks are the ones making the calls, and then Mastercard and Visa are acting as their attack dogs, and they're going after Valve. It was the only time that Valve had to like essentially bend the knee in a way because they didn't have a choice.
Right.
So what we got to do is we got to make it more expensive for them to do this than not do this. And
Right.
also, maybe we should look into different banks. We should say, look, if your bank supports this, you say, look, I'm going to take my business elsewhere, because ultimately, even though the banks have a lot of power, they have your money. So if they
Right.
don't have your money, they don't have shit. You ever
Right.
see the Beverly Hillbillies? Anybody remember that show?
Yeah. You
You guys
talking about
remember that
the
show?
old black and white show,
Yeah, it
or
was
the
black and white. I think it turned
yeah?
color
Oh
part
yeah, yeah.
way,
Part way
but it
through. Yeah.
yeah, it started off black and white. You remember that show?
Oh
You
yeah,
remember what
most
the
definitely.
you remember what the plot was?
Well, Jed found oil on his land, and then he ended up moving out to Beverly Hills, obviously, and the main banker, he was kind of Jed's foil throughout the entirety of the series because he was always trying to basically kind of undermine Jed's ability and try to just get him to like fall in line with kind of like these elitist kind of mindsets and sensibilities throughout the run of the show, basically.
Yeah, and so the thing about the thing that was really interesting about that show was that the hillbillies, Jeb and his family, I think they were the Crockett's,
Hmm.
they were, rural people that lived like in the swamp of the South,
Hmm.
happened upon some oil and became millionaires, but they still had those like rural sensibilities, right?
Yep.
And the banker, his thing was, despite the fact that he was a guy that you would think was more like, high status, he was completely at the whim of
Hmm.
Rockets, because they're the ones whose money was in his bank. And the last thing he wanted was for them to cancel their account and take their
Right.
business somewhere else. So he was at their beck and call. That was what the humorous dynamic was, is that,
Yeah.
there was something would happen. The banker wanted to help them in every way. Basically, he was like a servant to those
Yeah.
guys.
Mr. Drysdale.
Yes. Um,
Yeah.
So I just it's an interesting thing because we knew that about the banks. Like if you had enough, and I mean, granted, the plot was like he was like a millionaire, but if you have money, the bank needs you. You don't need them.
Right.
So like that's the thing, right?
Right.
And when
And
we figure out different ways to get around some of the stuff, like loans and all that, I think we'll be in a good place. So
right. And I do think that, in all things, decentralization is always the preferred, because I mean, that is ultimately what capitalism is really about, is decentralized ownership, because that creates customer competition, where you have to compete for the business of customers rather than these centralized top-down consumer models that they try to enforce upon everybody because, they widen the gap between people that can enter into the space to be competition, and
yeah,
using that leverage, they will, all this stuff economic means, the WF stands for World Economic Forum, and so if they can make the world bend the knee to the one world order of finance, then that's how they ultimately plan to circumvent national sovereignty, individual property rights, and all this kind of stuff. And if this continues, this is the beginning of the social credit score indexing, which is why I put that on today's thumbnail, is because this is a social credit censorship, and if you allow and abide by this to take place, then everything else that they've got in the wings, that they're doing everything that they can to try to bring into fruition, it becomes all the more possible. And so you have to, as it were, light the beacons and come to Gondor's aid in this instance, so that we can keep the Eye of Sauron, at bay, and not have it, rain down upon us with hellacious, fire and brimstone, and just kind of turn the entire world into an on-the-grid dystopia. It's crazy stuff, but it is funny that how gaming finds itself as the weird crossroads between all this stuff, because gaming in and of itself is historically built on stratego, which was something that was done in wartime, and so things may change the venue, but they very, very rarely actually change intention. And so we do find ourselves kind of the best equipped group of people, because we've studied pattern recognition and things like that, most of us since we were little kids. And so, being able to kind of see through the matrix, as it were, and call this stuff out for what it is the only way that we're going to get other people who just kind of live on the periphery's edge of all this stuff in, the state of man and under the guise of civility. These people that are in their button-down suits and have nice titles and all this kind of stuff, they generally are the ones who are the most perverse and twisted amongst us. But because they dress it up nice, they think that they can sit here and talk down to anybody who isn't putting on some kind of false front. But we need to keep our sovereignty and our independence, and keep things decentralized as much as possible.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I'm going to read some of your comments, and then we're going to move on to the next story. These are all very related, though. So we're talking about censorship this week, mostly, and who our allies are and who we should be wary of. So Norwegian Black Templar says, banning porn in exchange for the mark of the beast is a deal made in hell. Robert Johnson says, it's the satanic panic, music, Larry Flint rolling into Congress to testify, porn, and violence in video games all over again. This is fictional content, not reality. Robert Johnson then says, exposure to Judas Priest did not make every boy in my generation snuff himself. D&D did not increase the influence of the satanic church. Porn does not increase sexual assault rates, etc., etc. Gabriel says, Thompson repeatedly wanted to deny sales of numerous games for both adults and kids. He's not stopped, mind. In 2020, he penned Bill HB 353 in Utah that called to ban violent video games for adults and kids. Well, I didn't know that. That's that's fucked up. I disagree with that. I don't know if it went through, but this was in Utah. I mean, Utah is like Mormon country.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of woke people there too. It's like, it seems like the states in the U.S. that have the, let's say, like the highest population or concentrations of like libertarians or conservatives in it, usually the leftists that are there are like extra radical. Like here in Virginia, so in Chicago, it was just completely woke, right? But that meant that it was more or less like, I don't know, like it was kind of like steady. So there wasn't a lot of like radicalization. Every so often you'll see some communists, like literal communists, pop up, and they'll do a protest, or they'll, there was this bookstore by my house that was I call it the Maoist bookstore because they had all this Maoist stuff in it. And the woman, the lesbian non-binary thing that worked there, she had like a Mao t-shirt on, and I was like, wow, that's crazy. Like the guy killed like tens of millions of people, but okay. But here in Virginia, there's a lot of like, Gadsden flags, like people with "Don't Tread on Me," on their car and on their lawn and stuff. And they're, even some what do you call it? The rebel Confederate flags.
Mm-hmm.
And for them, it's just like heritage, not, it's just like, this is where my family lives. But then the leftists that are here are like absolutely like batshit insane. Like there are not a lot of them, but they're like compensating for their lower concentration, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's, they're like women with beards and like witches. There's lots of witches for some reason.
So many gay witches.
So many gay witches. Lots of witches. And yeah, and yes, it is mostly women I'm talking about. But yeah, a lot of that, it just seems that way. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I think Utah definitely has some woke concentrations in it.
Utah is
So
a very interesting place. Whenever you get into Salt Lake City, you see, of course, the giant temple. There's also like this really giant bank, and then there's also a very huge, Budweiser plant as well. And it's kind of like this is odd, like you got like this very pious city, but then you've also got like this money church that's almost as big as the temple itself, and then you also have like this Budweiser distribution center that it's just it's wild. It is a strange place. I've only visited Utah a few times, but I can only imagine living there.
I've never been. I actually, no, I didn't want to go to Utah. I wanted to go to Idaho at one
Mhm.
point. Boise looked really good, but Lindsay and I thought it was way too far. So, so we're in Virginia, which is kind of like a little bit further from,
Mhm.
at least from her family. But anyway, all right. So let me see more comments. Saint Hugo, welcome, says diversify. Not all eggs in one basket is the way to go. Creates not even more competition than just switching from one to the other. All right, thank you for that. It's a good
Thank
good
you.
advice. And then Robert Johnson says, next thing you know, old Jeb's a millionaire. The kin folks said, hey, move away from there. They said California is the place you want to be, so they loaded up the truck and they went to Beverly Hills.
Mhm.
That is swimming pools, movie stars. I still know that. Okay. St. Hugo says credit scores have been existing for the longest time and are basically the same as social scores.
Yep.
Are they? That makes sense. I
Yeah,
have
they're
a
the
I don't
pre
I mean,
pre-on.
yeah, I guess so. It's what?
I said that they're kind of like the pre-on to it. That's how they
Yeah.
it's the inception point. They'll be like,
Yeah,
oh well,
yeah,
you
yeah.
already have a credit score, so why wouldn't you have a social credit score that's tied to this? And but this is full on. Like, if you want to live by China's regulations, go move to fucking Beijing. You know, and you'll be exactly in the utopia that you want to be, led by your weird, uh, you know, I guess, corporatist communism, and you'll have all the things that will afford you, which is not much. But it's so strange that these people that because oh God, there was an article that I saw on X, I believe yesterday or the day before, that said that we need to redefine the term, the definition of dead for organ transplanting. I was like, oh, so yeah, we are just going full on,
Yeah, right.
Chinese
What do
Chinese
you mean by
authoritarianism.
dead
Okay,
per se?
right,
Yeah.
right.
Depends on your definition. Oh man, it always starts off.
Yeah, and I
It
believe it was
starts with the
from the
words.
New York Post. I believe that article was from, if I remember correctly.
What
Which,
was
no
that?
surprise. I say I believe that was an article from the New York Post, if
Oh,
I remember correctly. So yeah,
well, if you find
yeah,
that, let me know.
yeah.
I'm
Well,
curious about
I can
that.
check for it right now. Actually, I
All
got it in
right.
my notifications.
All right, let me move on to the next one. But thanks, guys, for the comments. Always appreciate your feedback. So, Anita Sarkeesian crawled forth from her tomb.
Right.
Someone disturbed the, her jars with the, like, from the mummy. Where you take the jars out and you read from the book, and the mummy comes out. Like, so she's reemerged from her tomb called Blue Sky. She is. So some people were asking who Anita Sarkeesian is, and
Yeah.
I get it because she hasn't really been relevant, or at least she didn't appear to be relevant for many years.
Yeah.
But she
Slight
is a
correction. It was the
feminist.
New York Times, not the New York Post. But I'm gonna send you the link
Oh, New York
right now.
Times. Oh, New York
Yep.
Times is so paused.
Yeah.
She is a prominent feminist media critic and founder of a little website and YouTube channel called Feminist Frequency. She basically, her whole thing was engaging in critical theory around video games, using critical theory to deconstruct video games, and constantly. And the purpose of critical theory is essentially to call something problematic and then criticize it until you control it. And that's what she was doing. and she made a lot of money. A lot of money. She got to be on Stephen Colbert. She got to speak at the United Nations alongside Zoe Quinn. She is not the person who caused Gamergate, but she was very much involved in its early years.
She was a useful
the
idiot.
The actual inciting event would be that would be the Gamers Are Dead articles that came after the Zoe Quinn thing. But Anita was around at the time, and she was also being criticized. So there's like often she's associated with Gamergate because like before Gamergate even started, Anita was making these videos called Tropes Against Women in Video Games. And I was doing responses with the other Honey Badgers over at Honey Badger Radio. And we would essentially tear all that stuff down because it was obviously like not well researched. She didn't know anything about video games, even though she pretended to, and used it as a pretense to essentially engage in this kind of, dialectic, essentially what it was. Okay. And, but she failed ultimately in a way. Well, okay, no, she won and she lost. So her channel ended up dying, but she did make all these, like the people at the top were giving her all kinds of access. She got on Stephen Colbert. She got to cry victim. The fucking Law and Order SVU made a whole episode about her.
Right.
I think you can find it online, dude. Have you seen it? John, have you seen the
No,
Law
I
and
can't
Order
say that
SVU episode?
I try to avoid those for the most part,
dude,
other than for parody.
If you were there though, I mean, but like, even if you weren't, I think you would get it because there's a lot that it's funny. I mean, it's pure gold. It's pure gold because
I might have to seek it out.
You can tell the people who wrote the show don't know what's going on. They don't understand video games. They don't understand like anything regarding that conversation, but they wanted to write a TV episode about it. And it looks like they basically wrote it and shot it in like a week,
Sounds
and like, isn't Logan Paul in it? Like he's
well, if he's in there, like then I'll just do a search.
He plays the leader of the evil gamers.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah. All right. So I'll just do an IMDb search on him and see if I can find that episode.
It's bad. But my point is, she also had like, I think it was either Google or Facebook. I think it was Facebook offices named a room after her. And Neil Druckmann, obviously, she ended up working in the games industry itself, advising, consulting on games. She worked on Dishonored 2. She worked on The Last of Us Part 2, or at least, she was a major influence on Neil Druckmann and continues to be an influence. So she's not nobody. Okay. Right. And she has come out of the tomb to essentially oppose the efforts of Collective Shout regarding this whole situation. Okay. So what did she say? So here's a thing that she shared. She said, "Someone give this brilliant book to the puritanical, angry moms who bullied payment processors into all but banning porn games. The reason we even have online payment processors is because of sex work. It was invented to pay for porn." And she shares a book written by Samantha Cole called How Sex Changed the Internet and the Internet Changed Sex. And then she says, "I really hope someone starts a counter campaign to fight this regressive, puritanical nonsense. There are way, way, way more people who want to buy and support sex work and sexual materials, or at the very least, don't think it should be banned."
Yeah, I think she's a little bit misguided on the history of credit systems. Not to say that
well, she's talking about payment processors like PayPal, I think.
Right. But I mean, even that in and of itself is, kind of dubious in her concept of what's behind it all. But these people are always about, just kind of, it's better to be morally right than factually accurate. So,
yeah. So, in a follow-up campaign, this is, by the way, these screenshots are Anita Sarkeesian's Blue Sky account because, of course, she's on Blue Sky. But
The vanilla sky.
Blue Sky, which is basically just like a constantly shrinking black hole of purity testing that ends up like excluding everyone. Inevitably, it will. I think Anita can stay woke enough to remain in there, but I think Mark Cuban ended up getting kicked out. He had to run away from Blue Sky. Mark Cuban is basically the Rosie O'Donnell of our Congress, sadly. But anyway, so she's calling for a counter campaign to combat what she describes as regressive puritanical nonsense. So remember, these are feminists. Like Collective Shout is feminist, Anita Sarkeesian is feminist. They're maybe slightly different kinds of feminists. Maybe I don't think they really are that different.
It's like different shades
like
of shit. It still stinks.
Collective Shout might be sex negative, but I don't think that's true because again, Collective Shout loved cuties, and they also went after David Cage's game, Detroit Become Human. David Cage is woke as fuck. So this is what I mean when I say the left is a constantly shrinking black hole of purity testing that inevitably ejects anyone once the black hole becomes dense enough, right?
Yeah. J.K. Rowling
whatever the opposite
immediately
of a black
springs
hole
to
is,
mind,
it actually pushes things out. What was that?
I say J.K. Rowling, the most obvious
J.K. Rowling,
example.
yes, J.K. Rowling is woke as fuck too, and people forget that. I mean, her pseudonym J.K. Rowling. She said early on the reason why she used that pseudonym is because she thought that boys would not buy her books if they knew it was written by a woman. So she just kept it J.K. Rowling and stayed vague, which is like a ridiculous assumption, but because Harry Potter was just, it was a good book, I guess. I didn't read them, but I'm too old for that shit. Okay, so anyway, she wanted to start a counter campaign. She recommended the book, A History of the World in Six Glasses, to highlight the historical role of sex work in shaping commerce, framing Collective Shout's actions as an overreach that stifles creative freedom. The stance aligned with her gamers and developers opposing the censorship, a notable departure from her usual alignment with feminist critiques of gaming culture. Sarkeesian's reaction appears rooted in her broader advocacy for creative freedom and her opposition to external entities, particularly unelected financial institutions like payment processors, dictating content policies. While she has historically criticized sexualized tropes in games, she has consistently argued that critiques should not equate to censorship, although she is not against censorship. Her Blue Sky posts emphasized that consumers should engage with content critically rather than banning it outright, a position that she reiterated in response to Collective Shout's campaign. Sarkeesian's stance surprised many in the gaming community, given her past criticisms of sexualized content, leading to polarized reactions. So what is the reason why I bring this up? Remember before I mentioned that there are some people who would say that they're conservative and they're okay with this censorship. They're using Anita Sarkeesian's positioning as appearing to be on the side of gamers as evidence of the fact that they're on the right side of this issue. But they're wrong, and she is also wrong. The enemy of my enemy is still my enemy, because Anita is not pro-free speech. And we know that because she wants all this stuff changed. She just wants to, let's just put it another way. She's in favor of it changing by her nudging the culture towards the direction that she wants things to look like. So rather than, chopping it off completely, she would mold it into the thing that she wants. She's like interested in creating a new kind of gaming culture by slowly changing it over time by constantly criticizing it. Like I said, the purpose of critical theory is to criticize something that you don't like until you control it. So you start off by saying, hey, I like this community over here. And then the community, because they are open and they are liberal, they say, oh yeah, sure, you can join us. And then you join them and you say, I like being here, but there's a couple of things I'm not really a big fan of. Can we change this or that? They start changing the drapes. They start asking for, compromises. They start asking for things. And depending on how you react to it, they may just back off and then they come back a little bit later, or they alter the deal so that it's slightly less compromising until you accept it. And then they move a little bit more. And then later on, they are like, hey, I feel like there's no people that represent me on that actually involved in leadership or in like running the direction. What do you think about we like add some people like me? How about me or somebody like me that maybe should have a seat at the table? And then they offer them a seat at the table, and then they're like, you know what? There aren't enough people like me that control the table, and then they
Right.
control the table, and then they exclude you. And this is
Right.
how she rolls. This is her approach. Look at what, like I said, what happened to The Last of Us. Okay, the first game was great. I loved it. Um, then the second one came out once the people who co-wrote the first game left the company, and it was just Neil Druckmann. And he's like, I'm in charge now, and he took all the stuff that he learned and injected it into the game. He even injected it into the DLC for the game.
Mm-hmm.
It was basically like the underage lesbian relationship.
Right.
Nobody
Well,
seemed to notice how weird that was. And this and it alienated everybody, but now he runs the table. So he's like, well, I don't care if you don't like it. We're just going to release this game now 10 times. We're going to make like, HD editions. We're going to make, now they're working on a chronological version of it. Like nobody cares, but he's going to do it. And he's got another game coming out. And I guarantee you that the Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet's going to be even worse because now they control it and they believe that if you go to a game store and you're looking to buy something and everything has that messaging, guess what? They have freedom of speech, but they're also the ones that control the conversation. So you don't have a choice. It might as well be censorship. It's like, why don't I have a Netflix account? Because all the shit on Netflix is trash.
Yep.
But if it was the only game in town, like that would be, you know what I'm saying? It's like there's a difference between excluding items from the menu and controlling the menu.
Right.
So
Yeah, and as you'd mentioned, her work on Dishonored 2, serious step down in quality and sales from the first Dishonored. First Dishonored's an interesting action stealth game, does some cool stuff. But then the second game, of course, you have your ethically beige woman of color as the protagonist. It was basically standing on the shoulders of giants. Let's go and take something that worked and turn it into a seat at the table kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, Anita's not on our side. She's trying to control the narrative, and maybe there's also a little bit of competition going on because now Collective Shout is stealing some of her thunder.
Right.
But ultimately, when the thing is, let's, for the sake of argument, let's have a little bit of a thought experiment. Let's say that Collective Shout is sex negative feminism and Anita Sarkeesian is sex positive feminism. Let's just say, for the sake of argument.
For the sake of argument, yeah.
There's no difference when it comes to men. Like at the end of the day, sex positive usually means like queer, like sex positive queer shit, you know? And I think ultimately they're both like sex positive in the sense that it's basically for women's sexual liberation, not men's.
Right.
And anything that involves men is still the enemy. Men's sexuality is filthy. Men's sexuality is dangerous. That's the stuff we got to exclude. I guarantee you that Anita Sarkeesian hates Stellar Blade, for example. She would not, like, she would criticize it into oblivion because it appeals to men, right? I mean, I think it appeals to women too. I'm pretty sure that, people like Madame Savvy have had nothing but nice things to say about these games, but that doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, it's about men. So when Anita goes after these people, we're not on the same side. Like she would take control of our media, like regardless. Okay. And I think it's foolish for, some of these guys on X that think that, this is some evidence of, that we're on the wrong side of this issue. No, Anita's not right. She's using this. So,
well, again, this is one of those things where if you get caught up in the spectacle rather than the substance. I know earlier this week, Melanie Mack, has kind of done some more rake stepping. Asmongold will not continue. Like he can't stop stepping on rakes currently about this whole thing. He is all
Asmongold can't what?
He cannot stop rake stepping all this week. He's all about being licensed to use the internet. That has been his thing for like the last 3 or 4 days, trying to justify his point, saying that well, if you just leave this to the corporations, they're going to data mine you. But at least if we had the government involved, then it would make it so that they couldn't do that. And it's like, you are being way naive about this whole thing. Like,
Yeah.
if you think that
Yeah.
the data mining is going to stop because of government involvement, dude, you you are just completely off base, and trying to sit here and say that being for the idea of a government cattle gating to use the internet is somehow going to keep it free and liberated. The word governance means to limit. So, like,
Mhm.
anytime you go and get the government involved, you are specifically signing and submitting to limitations. And it's bad enough when it comes through the private sector, such as these payment processors and the banks and all this kind of stuff that want to control things economically. It's even worse when you actually go and put that into legal enforcement. You know, if you're sitting here trying to say that because this person who is generally opposite to you in ideology is looking at something for whatever reason, as they say, a broken clock's right twice a day. If you can actually look at something from a substantial standpoint of, I have individual liberties and freedoms and discretion to choose for myself, that whether you agree with somebody wholeheartedly or are generally vehemently opposed, we are all still, part of the human race, and we have the human condition. And so we will find ourselves at certain point in times, you know, looking at things that are beyond ideological mindsets. And when you go and try to take those things, because freedom and liberty, that's something that everybody should want, generally speaking. And that's not just, an exclusive to your ideological, partisan biases and viewpoints. And it's in those common grounds that we should actually be able to start to notice, the system for what it is, and that is the authoritarian control state. And ultimately, whether you agree with somebody's ideology or not, we still want the freedom to choose for ourselves. And that, but that doesn't mean that all of a sudden everything that Anita Sarkeesian's worked for and continues to work for, just because there's this one instance where it's like she can actually use some level of common sense discernment and say, well, I should have the right to choose for myself.
Yeah.
That's just kind of, a moot point compared to the rest of her ideological motivations. But in this instance, just going and saying, because she says this, well, then clearly, because I'm on the complete different ideological standpoint, then anybody who agrees with her must be wrong. That is in and of itself also naive and a very myopic way of looking at the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, I think that we have to be more discerning. Like, it's not about, first of all, a lot of people are in a hurry to win right away, and this is
Hmm.
just not the way things work.
Right.
So it's okay if we don't give this person the light of day, and that's why I bring it up. So it's
Hmm.
not because I'm obsessed with Anita. I want people to remember what she did, and then just like dismiss her because
Right.
she's trying to grasp onto relevance. She's using this to promote herself in a way, and it's good to attach yourself to something like this big collective shout thing. So,
Yeah.
but
And
okay,
there
so
certainly are sex positive feminists. The woman who is in charge of my game design department, Brenda Brathwaite, she wrote the book Sex and Games, and she is woke as fuck. She is as woke as it gets.
mhm,
She was the inaugural president. Like, she was the first president of the Women in Games special interest group, which is a subsidiary of the IGDA, which also is the people behind the Game Developers Conference. And
yeah,
we all, and that is the, when you go into the what is the history of caused Gamergate, a lot of it comes through them. Because that was where they, how do we figure out how to have seats at the table, and it was through all of that kind of madness. So, but I wouldn't trust any of those people whatsoever.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to read some of your comments, and we're going to move on to the next story. So, Marin Ribarik said, wasn't Dragonlance written by a woman? Yeah, I think it's Yeah, I think so. I never read them, but they're very popular books. At least they were when people liked to read fantasy back in the day.
Hmm.
Great Indoors 1979 says sex positive for me, sex negative for thee. Yes, that's right. Teal Deer in the chat says when you have to be sex positive while opposing depictions of women people would want to F.
Hmm.
Yes. Well, that's exactly right. They want, like I said, sex positive. They can't really square that circle because they really just want it to be sex positive for a certain kind of person, and that person's not men, so at least not straight men that have normal, sexual tastes and appetites. All right. Teal Deer then says also she's only sex positive for female workers. She will never mention rent boys, bachabazi, etc. Only the 304s on OnlyFans matter. The six-figure earning one specifically. Yes, yes,
Yep.
yes. Let me see. Gabriel says, "Yo, Teal Deer, they put you and Karen in Zootopia too. Have you seen the trailer?" Yeah, I know it's not. It was not. I'm not making a claim that's what it was. It was just a weird coincidence that I thought would be funny. We'd have to see if it actually is a reference. Teal Deer says the badger depiction is suspicious, but could be a coincidence. The deer is unlikely to be a reference unless at some point it gets teal paint spilled on it or something. I was thinking that too. There'd be like some gag where it gets covered in paint. If that
Hmm.
happens, though, I don't know. I'm gonna lose it a little bit. But it's the at this point, like, what is our media really? Zaranx gave a Rumble rant. Thank you, Zaranx,
Hmm.
and says if Collective Shout is $2, if Collective Shout is stealing Sarky's thunder, I feel like championing their misguided campaign because I think the constant discussion of Sarky is elevating her again, like we did in the past. And then he gives another $2 and says, "I'm sorry, but I just think discussing Sarkeesian is giving shine to a demon while the devil is working, if that makes sense." Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's beneath us to talk about because Anita, there's a lot of people who don't know who she is. Like
Hmm.
people who came to this party late, right? Like
Right.
when the show started, someone was in Rumble saying, "Who is Anita Sarkeesian?"
Right.
So I think that they should know. That's it. Like if unless something happens, I'm not going to talk about her again.
Right.
But we'll see. So
Yeah. I would say
let me see.
fixating on her and bringing her up time and time again where it's not warranted would be
Yeah,
inadvisable. But, in a situation where it actually is creating some degree of, I guess, confusion and, like the way that these people that are ideologically opposed to her are saying because of her involvement, well, then clearly, that's a fallacy. And we're exposing the fallacy. She just happens to be associated with the fallacy that's being, utilized. And so you can't
yeah.
really talk about that without talking about her in the subject at hand. So, but yeah, I mean, it's like anything, you talk about it when it's appropriate and necessary. But otherwise, yeah, just let her languish into obscurity and just be a footnote.
Yep, I agree with that. All right. Let me see. Teal Deer says the Anatomy of the State by Rothbard should be required reading for everyone. Everyone. It also is it's also only under 50 pages, so there's no excuse. Dude, that's more pages than Lauren Southern's book. Um let's see. I think that's it. St. Hugo says you need to know about the snakes in the grass. Agreed. Yeah, it's good to know, right?
Mhm.
Um, all right. People also need to be reminded about Digra on top of Sarkeesian. Digra is probably more important, to be honest. Yeah, is that going to come back up? I know about Digra. I think I may have done a show on them a while ago. Digital Games Research Association. Um, it's yeah, they are also something we should look into, see what they're up to lately because I haven't seen it. But anyway, all right. Thank you for your comments once again. Let us move on to the next story. So, you guys remember when Gab came out? Do you guys know what Gab is? John, do you know what Gab is?
It's kind of like WhatsApp, to my understanding.
It's like
Uh,
it basically was a competitor for Twitter. So
okay.
back when Jack Dorsey owned Twitter, back in those days of Crash Override Network, um, and all of the, well, just all the kinds of crazy practices going on over at Twitter when Twitter was, owned by the left, basically.
Right.
There were a lot of people who tried to make competition, competitive versions. There was, before Truth Social, there was a couple of them. I'm trying to remember them now, but one of them was Gab. And Gab
Yeah.
was made by Andrew Torba, I think his name is.
Okay.
And Andrew Torba, it has a frog because it's essentially the Groyper, the Groyper Twitter, basically. Very edgy. I have a Gab, but I haven't been there in a long time. And Gab released an AI. So they were working on an AI for a while, but they finally released it. So Gab AI, a social media platform known for its lax moderation, just putting it lightly, faced significant controversy when its AI chatbot, Gab AI, also called Aria, I'm not making that up, Arya, Aria, was banned on X on August 1st, so yesterday. The chatbot launched on X in January 2024 and fully interactive by January 12th was accused of spreading anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, Holocaust denial, and extremist rhetoric, including content from its Talk to Adolf Hitler chatbot. Critics, including the World Jewish Congress, no shit, and Fighting Online Anti-Semitism, argued that Gab AI's unmoderated responses amplified hate speech under the guise of free speech, posing a risk of mainstreaming radicalization. Gab CEO Andrew Torba defended the platform, framing the ban as censorship of truthful AI, while X justified the suspension, citing violations of its hate speech policies. The ban sparked debate, with some X users decrying it as an attack on free speech, which it is, and others praising it as a necessary curb on toxic content. The controversy highlights ongoing tensions between free expression and content moderation. What do you guys think?
I mean,
so like literally Grok was this, like just
Yeah.
like a couple weeks ago.
Grok 3.0 or
And
whatever.
Elmo.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how many times that this has to be said, but words are words, violence is violence. Hate speech is free speech. You are allowed to speak freely. You're just not allowed to, commit to actions of violence. You can, this whole rub to try to get through concepts of stochastic terrorism and things that can be actionable on you based on things that you had said because someone, whatever anybody's motivations are, those are their intentions. Whatever kind of things that they perceive as their motivational forces, it's still ultimately their agency that they aren't able to actually take accountability for their own actions. And trying to say that, if you go and you say something that is distasteful or outright rude and repugnant, somehow you're committing an act of hate speech. Even if it is, hateful and full of, venom and vitriol and, disdain towards other people, so fucking what? People are assholes. That's the way life is. You have to be brave in the face of adversity. To sit here and say that, because I can't handle this, we need to tamp it down and shut it out and make it. Again, I've said this before. Human nature is brutish. It is the furthest thing from civility. And all these people that think that we could somehow turn humanity into this civil social utopia are beyond being up their own ass and around the corner with their naivety and delusion. It's just that's not how nature is. Nature is survival of the fittest, and if you're going to go and try to pollinate your weakness into other people to turn weakness into a strength, then you're actually undermining humanity beyond the societal level. I have hope for humanity, but I lack faith in society. To just kind of put it mildly.
Well, I think ultimately, I think that for me, everything that I've been doing is just like trying to get a conversation going, and a conversation is how we get to the truth. If the people involved in the conversation are doing so in good faith, and I think a lot of things, there's a lot of genies out of a lot of bottles right now, and there's nothing that can be done about that except to have the conversation. And
Right.
so I took a peek at Gab, I think AI, but I had to like sign up to do it, and I was like, I don't know if I want to give my email to these people. I don't like. I'm hesitant to sign up for anything
Yep.
generally because like if it involves an email or something. But there's nothing that it said just based on the short amount of time I had with it that I had not heard already from the mouths of actual people. I
Right.
don't think that it's promoting violence. I think that the people who like these groups like the World Jewish Congress and Fighting Online Anti-Semitism, the Anti-Defamation League, Citizens United, the all these various sort of like groups that supposedly exist to like tamp down on hate speech or hate.
Hmm.
They're all bad actors. They're
Right.
all the very bad actors that should not be involved in the conversation. And I think that if we're all looking for the truth, it doesn't matter how we get there, like as long as it's without violence, right?
Right.
And so I'm for that. And I think that, you know, Gab getting banned on X, I mean, it doesn't surprise me because it's not this is the thing like I get from some people who are really really up in arms about this. It's like, yeah, but what like why do you think Elon Musk is like a an absolute free speech guy? I don't think he ever was. I
No.
think that he's like more than like the average lefty is, but I don't think that he's like an absolutist in that. And he's got like, well, I think Linda Yaccarino, who used to be
Hmm. Yeah.
involved
She
with
just
the
recently
yeah,
left the position.
she like stepped down. So I don't know who they got in her place.
Yeah.
But like you gotta be patient with these things
Hmm.
and let the conversations continue. And
Right.
I think
Everyone has
it'll
their blind spots too, and I think
yeah,
that
like
you have to. I mean, there's no way that anybody can ever be altruistically, nothing but good. That in of itself is a
yeah.
fallacy. So yeah, like Elon Musk better than some alternatives, but
Well,
doesn't
here's
mean
the
that
thing
I
too.
I
Like
trust him implicitly.
Gab AI is accused of um, anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, but it
Hmm.
doesn't like we don't get into the specifics of what those are because like you know there's a guy who has a podcast called Martyr Made. His name is Cooper. It was David Cooper. I know his name is Cooper. Okay, and his series is purely historical,
Right.
not not at all like it's not opinions, it's not based in some kind of belief. If you listen to them and they're very long, so they're like you really have to sit down for these. He goes into at least from his research all of the history in various parts of the world, particularly the Middle East, but not only England, everything, but like post Napoleonic Wars
Right.
and everything that was happening. Because like when you go to school and you learn your history, you learn a certain kind of history, right?
Right.
Like as an American, I learn American history, so I don't know what Canadian history is. If you're my wife's Canadian, she learned Canadian history, and so if when we sat down and talked to each other about like what we learned about our history, there were all kinds of holes in our stories that
Yep.
we filled in, right? That I didn't know about Canada and its relationship to the US and vice versa. And what Martyr made, the guy who makes that podcast, what he sets out to do is he tries to fill in every hole as in history as possible because a lot of our history is very oversimplified
Right.
and it's written by the victors too, but in such a way that if you're not curious, you're not going to like get the full picture of it,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So like the whole story of like how Israel came to be as a country, for example, would be considered anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. There's
Exactly.
history.
Yes.
Like
Right.
it's not the Israel from the Bible. It's not.
No.
Like that,
No.
but like we're supposed to think it is because some guy wrote a special version of the Bible called the Schofield Bible, which has a completely different narrative in it that is intended to essentially alter our perception of what that country in the Middle East is.
Right.
But his podcast tells you like where it came from, how it got there, what Winston Churchill's involvement was, what the British Empire's involvement was with that.
Hmm.
All of the things. I haven't even gotten to World War II. Like
Right.
where I stopped listening. I think you know, Hitler was just coming into the picture, and
Yeah.
he's doing it in as much of an objective way, I think, as possible, right?
Yeah.
And that's why it got me interested, because if I just want like the storybook version, I just watch Private Ryan or something. But
Right.
I want to know, like, really, because it seems to be the only war. I mean, World War II specifically seems to be the only war that is as black and white as it is. And that doesn't make sense, right?
No.
Because any other war you can look at and be like, oh, I see. It's just like the Civil War in the United States. We have a black and white view of that in the popular, but it's
Mhm.
like, oh, that doesn't make sense, because like the descendants of that still live today. And I think they know more about what the Civil War, like what was really involved. The more you
Right.
learn about, what's going on, what happened in history, the more nuanced it becomes, because it is humanizing. It doesn't
Mhm.
make things black and white.
Right.
And what I'm saying is that if Cooper is seen as, he's basically just blanket called anti-Semitic because he's looking at history as objectively as he can, then I have to question if that's what Gab is. So when
Right.
they make that claim, I think that that's questionable. And then they say Holocaust denial. Like, what does that mean? And I know that I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for this.
Oh,
Okay,
believe me, I have
but
a thing that I'm going to add to what you're saying.
they made, like, look, they made that illegal in Germany to
Mhm.
even bring it up, right?
Right.
So, like, why would they do that? Like, why would they do that if it wasn't to control the German people so they can't
Right.
even like talk about it? I
Right.
don't think anyone is more ashamed of what happened, or at least the narrative around it, than Germans. Like, they're
Right.
made to probably be reminded of it every fucking day. That's my
Right.
guess.
Yeah,
So,
and when you talk about, when you start to kind of get into the history of World War II, I know, the fairy tale storybook version is that uh, Jewish people were the victims of the Holocaust. But that's some Jewish people. There were also some Jewish people who were the perpetrators of the Holocaust, which now I've just really just stepped over the third
no,
rail,
you're
and
right.
and
I
but
know
that
it
is
wasn't
when
black and
you
white.
exactly, and that's the thing, is like when you go and actually start talking about that aspect, because that is the formation of Israel as we know it. It was people that were willing to do terrible things to their brothers and sisters, and if they are willing to do that at such a cost, what do you think that they would do to the rest of us? And that's like, and that's part of the reason why they don't want you to ever actually look into these things, because then it starts to get you to kind of say, what is all this, anti-Semitism really about, other than just a way to deflect from the people that have, in many ways, uh, you know, tried to use emotional tinted kind of thought process control to prevent you from actually being able to look into the context and actually discern something and actually kind of know more, and so that it can actually be avoided. And I mean, I mean, saying that in and of itself is enough to just get between what you and I have said, now
Mhm.
we're the enemies of the ADL, which I probably was beforehand, but that's perfectly
Oh,
fine.
yeah. I mean, I know I know I'm on a list, but I
Yeah.
was gonna say, one thing that I think that is really interesting and funny about this is that, this whole thing started because, well, like where I'm at now sort of started because I was accused of being misogynistic. Like,
Hmm.
that was one of the first allegations against me, right? When I started doing this work with HBR. And at first, I was trying to figure out ways to like prove that I wasn't,
Yeah.
because I was blue pilled and normal, like a
Hmm.
normie blue pilled guy. And I was like, well, no, no, I don't hate women. And after a while, I started to realize, oh, wait, they call you this no matter what you do.
Yeah.
And then I thought, wait, they're using this to control my behavior. They're trying to use this as a way to shut me up. And that was something that I realized pretty early on. And over time, I said, you know what? All of these allegations do that, like getting called a racist, getting called
Hmm.
a Nazi, getting called a fascist, getting called sexist, getting called homophobic. So
Yep.
I just started to realize that none of those terms actually exist. Like, they're not
Yep.
real. And what I mean is, the only thing that really matters is behavior. So, like, for example, a black man goes into drives a truck through a Christmas parade, and he's interviewed after when they catch him, and he says, "I wanted to kill white people."
Mhm.
And some people say, "Well, that's a racist hate crime." But I think that the most important part of this is not that he said he wanted to kill white people. The most important part of this is that he drove a truck into a crowd and killed a bunch of people.
Right.
So the action is what matters, because the motives for it don't matter. Like, because well, the problem is that when you make the motivations for something matter that much, like, oh, he just hated X or whatever, then that motive becomes more important than the act.
Yep.
Like, it basically
Pre-crime.
becomes a bigger problem. And then you start controlling people because you want to prevent the actions. You start going after the motivations or whatever the stated motivations are. And you also take away from people who maybe they're just psycho and they just want to kill people. And they're
Right.
not they're not being picky about who they do it to. They're just mad they had a bad day, whatever, and they take it out on people. Like Elliot Rodger, who, they say, oh, he was a misogynist and all this, but he killed more dudes than women. He killed
Mhm.
like 3 dudes and then himself, and he killed like 1 woman. So it was like he may have said he didn't like women, but his actions show he killed, like, he was a misanthrope, if anything. He just hated
Mm.
people.
Right.
And that was probably because of his abusive mother, stepmother, actually, and his absent father. So it prevents us from actually like understanding like why, like what it is that actually is harm. And it is a method of control. And the same groups that were so big on using that language, that kind of like, these concepts of like bigotry to control people, are now having it directed at them, and they're crying anti-Semitism. But they're the same people. Like, it's coming from academia. Who runs that? It comes from our media. That's
Mhm.
where it comes from. And now they're like, wait, but now you're actually doing hate. No, 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 no. It's the same concept. None of this is real. There's
Right.
just behavior, and I'm judging that. It's just good and evil. It's right and wrong. That's all. There's no racism. There's no sexism. There's no homophobia. There's no transphobia.
Yeah.
That's not real. You could have like crazy prejudices. That's not illegal. People are allowed to have them. We do that all the time. Everyone prejudges. Everyone discriminates.
Mhm.
Everyone does all the
It's human
time.
nature.
It is like, how do you live if you don't do that? So when you realize the thing that I think is funny about this is that people are, I hope, because I do think that there's like wignats out there, like white nationalist types that are like, they're trying to do the opposite of this in a way that they think they're gonna win. And I'm like, no, you're clueless and stupid, because like there's nobody who's been more demoralized about their own identity than white people. So it's not gonna happen. But
Right.
ultimately, if you stay focused on the behavior and you ignore the allegations of bigotry, you'll get to the truth much faster. And I think that these groups know that, and they're losing their grip on the that kind of control, that post World War II mythological consensus that was upheld by the boomers and it carried on into like today. And now we're seeing it all unravel,
Mhm.
and it's just losing power. And fortunately, I think that a lot of us are like pretty like fine with that. I know I am. I'm
Mhm.
fine with this because I'd rather operate in a world that's just truth, and I don't give a shit about like
Yeah.
what you look like or whatever. Like, that's not important to me, right?
Right.
Oh, anyway, that's it. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, no, we
Uh,
need to look at things for in the holistic aspect, warts and all, everything like that. These things that are overly produced to be sleek and just shiny and shave off any of the rough edges and try to hide all the actual context so that they can get you to go along with the content of excuse me of their supposed ideology, their virtue signaling. Those people are perpetrating just as heinous acts as the things that they sit here and say that they're in opposition to. Because I mean, just look at the state of reality currently. What's happening? You have like, you know, some pretty terrible things that are happening. I've time and time again I say I don't really support Palestine or Israel. I think that that whole thing is an utter debacle, and the less that we had to be involved with it would be to the better, and they can sort out their own issue. Um, you know, uh, because just trying to sit here and take some kind of standpoint based on what's allowed to be looked at as evidence and this and that. It's part of the reason why we are losing control in this country,
Yeah.
in and of
Oh, for
itself. And
sure.
so,
Like the lobby has to go. The
right.
lobby has to go. And I think that more, like I said, the conversation's happening
Mhm.
everywhere. Gab AI is probably like it's like a small fish by comparison, and it's okay. Like there's more antipathy towards the state of Israel now than there has been in a long time, and I think it's justified because
Yep.
the information is out there, and that's what I'm saying. Like these like calls of allegations of anti-Semitism to basically like allow a government to just bomb civilians and like shell the
Right.
shit out of people that are starving like that's not going to fly because I don't give a shit about the allegations. I care about the behavior, and the
Right.
behavior is abhorrent, and that's it. So
Right.
like that, and that's what any like person with common sense will just do.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's still a lot of people that like will freak out about that.
Right.
But that's because they're still in that feminine mindset of like people's feelings. But
Right.
okay, I'm gonna read some comments, and then we're gonna move on to the last story.
Yep.
I have a couple little ones, and maybe
No
we'll have
worries.
time for a little bit of cake because THQ put out like a thing where they have a couple of trailers that I'd be interested in looking at. So anyway, Teal Deer says anti-Semitic conspiracy theories like Jewish people having a word for everyone who isn't them, goyim, and
Hmm.
others, and orders in their religion to control and destroy those worded people, like Islam does. Yes, interesting that like you're somebody who understands that of the Abrahamic religions, Judaism and Islam have a lot in common, and no one
Right.
wants to address it. But Judaism is way sneakier.
Hmm.
Okay, but or at least like Jews are. Um, all right. Anyway, Norwegian Black Templar says Holocaust denial started out as just that, and over time it became a way to shut people up. Yeah, because people accepted that it was something worthy of confronting in that way. People should be allowed to deny whatever. Like there are people who believe the Earth is flat. Do we like
Hmm.
arrest them? So, okay. Let me see. Brian has soggy knees confirmed. Yes. Teal Deer says, at first I started trying to prove I don't hate women. Then over time and interacting with more and more women and listening to what they say, I realized I actually do. Gabriel says, here's Israel, the specter of John Doe approaches. Yeah, he constantly hounds me about this. Like he thinks I can just like call up Netanyahu on the phone and tell him to stop it. Like,
Right.
what do you want from me? I think a lot of people, they want you to say something that signals that you're like on the right side of this issue.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I never speak out of turn if I can help it.
Yeah.
So, and again, like I want things to be like fine, but I got my own shit to worry about. You're looking at some
Exactly.
country 1,000 miles away.
Ex- Exactly that, and like just the same way that we created our own boogeyman with the
Yeah,
CIA funding Al Qaeda, Hamas is a construction of Israel, and so they're fighting their own proxy group, so they can
yeah,
and so it's like, and that's the way that it is. And when you actually know that, it's kind of like you look at this whole situation in a different way because it's like, do I? Uh, I do not condone Hamas. I don't think that that they're fighting the good fight. I believe that they are a wedge piece, so that the shelling of women and children and people that are just living their lives who happen to be in a place that is being fought for, are getting caught in the crosshairs by a control state and
yeah.
and their proxy groups, so that they can have that boogeyman to say, well, we have to do this sort of thing. But when you actually know what actually goes into it, it's like, ugh, this is, just stay the fuck out of it. Like it's all
Yeah.
abhorrent.
All right. Master Goa gives us $5 super chat. Thank you. And says, we forgave Germany for WW2, but we never forgave our WW2 ally Russia for doing the most to defeat them. Ukraine is black and white, but we must save Azov. Yeah. Well, I think we may have fought the wrong enemy in World War II. I don't know. Because like the communists, the Bolsheviks are way worse than the Nazis, in my opinion. Only because we allowed them to get worse.
Hmm.
Danny Silver says Gab was fun a decade ago, but within 2 years completely devolved into trash rage bait. I haven't been on there. Dean Domino says, oy vey, Brian. Oy vey indeed.
And
Saint
shout out to
Hugo says
Dan.
Germany made sure to guilt trip every later generation the way that has gone global the last few years. Absolutely. And Master Goa gives us $2 and says Israel forgets that God will punish them as he has. Well, yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. What was that, John?
Oh, I was just saying shout out to Dan. That's he's my friend.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate the comments. Okay, so what did let me look at and see if what I mentioned in my description, because I don't want to I only have enough time for like one more story, so I want to make sure it is the one. Let's look at the THQ announcements. I was going to mention that there's a rumor that so now that Stephen Colbert's show is going away, that there's a rumor that he might be starting a new show with Rachel Maddow. Let's hope that happens, because
they're going to call it Double Vision.
Yeah, right. Twinsies.
Right.
Anyway.
2 woke white women telling you the news.
Okay, so let's look at some trailers. There's a you guys remember the game Darksiders series? Darksiders, making a Darksiders 4, which I didn't think they were doing that. It hadn't even come across my mind, but apparently they are. So we're gonna look at that really quick. There's let me see vids here. So I saw the trailer got pushed through. Let me just look it up.
No worries.
Darksiders 4 trailer. It's a teaser, really. So hold on a second. Share this tab. Let's go here. All right. Let me make sure that this has audio.
Yep.
You will be hunted. The White City for certain. The Council. And there will be others. You would wage this war alone?
No. Not alone.
All right. So the Darksiders games were kind of all over the place. There was the original Darksiders was kind of like a Metroidvania action game with like sort of like people compare it to Legend of Zelda and stuff. The second one, Darksiders 2, where you played Death, had like RPG and loot elements in it. I thought that it was, I don't know, I didn't like that as much. I think that it was, and then Darksiders 3 was more leaning into the Souls-like part of it with, but I didn't mind that one. I played it pretty much all the way through. And then there was a 4-player co-op one that I never picked up, but I was actually very interested in, called Genesis, which had like more of a top-down, 4-player shared screen, maybe. I'm not really sure, like Diablo style game. And we don't know anything about this 4th one, but it looks like all 4 characters are going to be in it. So maybe it'll be multiplayer. I think that'd be very cool. They did that. So I don't know. But do you have any opinions on that?
I believe I own Darksiders 1 and 2 in my
There was a big sale,
library,
a THQ sale when they were shutting down.
But I can't say that I've really ever played all that much into them. The 3rd game, when it came out, it's too colorful for me. So a game called Darksiders, it seemed like it was kind of like a saccharine version of it. And so
Which one?
Darksiders 3, the one where you're like the chick.
The color palette, with the chick with the whip sword thing.
Right.
The artist,
it just seemed a little too kind of DI friendly kind of design. So I never really even looked into that one beyond the initial kind of glance.
Yeah. So the thing about the Darksiders games that I thought got my interest as a person who really was into comic books and is an artist was that the artwork for those games was all based on the work is basically this guy named Joe Madureira, who did a lot of, he has a very distinct style, and I believe he worked on all of the art design for those games. And so they have a distinct look. It's kind of like how you guys remember the game Kingdom of Alamur, Awakening? That was all designed by Todd McFarlane, who is the guy that created Spawn, and he drew Spider-Man for a while. He even did Iron Man comics for a little bit, if I remember correctly. Or Hulk comic. They were Hulk comics, not Iron Man. And yeah, so like this is Joe Mad's work. So here's one that you might find interesting. So this was a twin stick ARPG and shooter. Oh, okay. Thank you for telling me that. St. Hugo says to avoid inbreeding that would require more like 100 couples that take care of their family trees really well. Oh, I think you're responding to somebody else. I'm like, what? All right. So this is called Spy Drops. Tell me what this reminds you of.
Okay.
Got like a retro PS1 look.
Right. Just kind of getting
Modern retro stealth.
oh yeah, it's Metal Gear with tits.
What was that?
Oh, I was saying, reminds you of Metal Gear with boobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dreamcatcher success.
I can spy. I guess I have like a versus mode or something.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's Metal Gear Weeb.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think based on what I saw. So
Yeah.
And so yeah, those were two games that stood out for me. I think there might have been like one other one. I know that speaking of Metal Gear, I know that Metal Gear Sigma is coming out pretty soon, right?
Delta, but yes.
Delta. I'm sorry, Delta.
That's all right. It's all right. I mean, he is kind of a Sigma.
Yeah, you're right. I had that wrong.
That's okay.
Let me see. There's some other games, but we should like end it here. So
yeah.
I'll just put this on
there
so
we
you guys
go.
can see it. And yeah, so we're gonna wrap it up there. And I guess that'll be it for the show. So where are you going to be at, John? What do you got going on this week?
Let's see. Tonight, I might be doing more Red Dwarf watch parties. I don't know. Like, people haven't really been showing up the last couple weeks, so I'm gonna talk to Will about it and be like, I'll go hang out there in a room for an hour, but I'd much rather just be being, left to my own devices to play Death Stranding 2, which I'm going to be doing immediately after this. But throughout the week, you can see me on Will the Fans' channel tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific. I'm there throughout the week. on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. Tomorrow specifically is our Time in Red Dwarf in Space episode, where we'll be talking about where we're at. We're going through the series from the beginning. We're now just in the second season. Of course, I'm more often than not with Toasty on her channel, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. We are together on Sundays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. And of course, then I'm here with you on the weekends at the same time. And I think we're getting really close to our 1-year anniversary. So I don't know if we're going to do like a game stream for that or what the plan's going to be. But otherwise, if you are a content creator interested in getting some kind of, access to other content creators, I do have the FFS Discord, which you can find links for on my X profile. Either look for Problematic White Guy or at problematic_John. And I'm soon to be starting to make my own stuff again, VODs, live streams, and all that kind of stuff as soon as this new tech arrives. But I think today was a fun conversation, definitely controversial for a lot of people if they have weak sensibilities. But that's why I always enjoy talking to you once a week.
Not my audience.
No. Of course not.
Edgier than me, honestly.
Right. But yeah, no, I enjoy the conversations we have. The audience is always awesome that joins in with us. But with that said, though, safe travels ahead. Y'all have a wonderful weekend going forward. Of course, be awesome as always.
All right. Well, you guys know we're going to be doing more White Boy Summer in the month of August. I got definitely more plans. I got my, because of the new setup, I finally got it to where I can run Cyberpunk without like it turning into a slideshow. So I will be playing more of that, and I'm having a good time with it. So be on the lookout for that and other things that I have planned. Thank you guys so much for coming on the show. If you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today. And please, please, please share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of The Week in Culture. And we'll talk to you guys in the next one. Long live Vivian.
With the glass ceiling broken, all the oppressed groups shall prosper, especially the most oppressed group of all, gamers.
I want people in the industry to be a little bit louder about people being mean to other people, and maybe say it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
Maybe say we don't want you around if you're going to be a cunt.
Yeah.
And hateful. And that the games industry is diverse naturally. Not because anyone's making them be diverse, because the world is diverse, you stupid motherfucker. And if you have a problem with that, come fight me. Physically. Bitch.
Has anyone taken you up on that yet?
No, because they're all pussies.
Yep.
Down here, salt is a way of life.
Obviously, the environment down here is all salt. The ceiling's salt, the floor is salt, the walls are salt, and to an extent, the air is salt. And you breathe that in, and you can constantly taste the salt.